Welcome back to Realistic Fishing. Today, we're going to talk about worms. We're going to go over a few different kinds of worms and 2 ways I like to fish them, and hopefully catch some bass. There are a lot of different worms out there, and here's some of my favorites. Got a ribbon tail worm here, got a stick worm, a curl tail worm, and a finesse worm, all of which can be rigged on a Texas rig, and that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start out with this culprit ribbon tail worm in a shad pattern and see if we can catch any bass. My favorite rig when I'm fishing a plastic worm is a Texas rig. Real easy to rig here. You hook about 1/4 inch of worm onto the hook and slide it up to the top like this. Then you poke the hook through like this. And then you hook the tip of the hook right into the skin of the worm like that. You want to make sure your hook is big enough so that when a fish bites this, that happens. You want that hook to poke out. So let's set it back up. Show you again. When the fish bites, you want the hook to poke out like that so he can get hooked. I'm using an 1/8 ounce weight. You don't want a weight that looks huge in front of your worm. This looks just right. It's about the same diameter as the worm. Now that we have the basic rigging, let's go down here and fish for a while and see if we can catch a bass on a Texas rigged ribbon tail worm. So to fish this, I'm just going to drag it on the bottom and reel up the slack. I'm going to pause in between and watch that line. Drag, reel up the slack, and wait. If I'm not reeling it in and that line starts going tight, that's a fish. If I'm dragging it like this and I feel the fish pull, that's a bite. I'm never really in a hurry when I'm fishing a plastic worm. I'm just dragging it on the bottom and watching that line. Every once in a while, give it a little hop, right? Just lift the rod tip, hop it off the bottom. You'll be able to feel it come off the bottom and sink back down. Let's make our way down here to these weeds. Even fishing by the weeds, same premise. I'm going to cast it out. I'm going to let it sink. I'm going to drag it just a little bit. Then I'm going to pause. You can see the rocks in the real shallow water, but then they disappear when the water's about 8 to 10 inches deep. So the water's kind of muddy today. I'll even pitch a worm right into the thick grass. As long as you have it rigged with that weedless Texas rig, you can slowly work it through there and it won't get too hung up. Sometimes those big bass are just sitting right in the grass. You just got to run it right past their face, nice and slow. There's a lot of little tiny minnows out here today. There's a bite. Fish on. Got him. Woo! That's a nice bass. Peel and drag. It's up here in these weeds. Got to give them a second. There we go, working them through. Here we go. Here we go. Got him. There we are. There's a nice big bass on that Texas rig culprit worm. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Now that's a good looking bass right here. Check this out. That's easily over 3 pounds. Look at this. Nice, fat, big, tall bass here. Yeah. That's a good fish. Texas rigged culprit worm. Not even a big worm. Right? Good fish. Good fish. Let's let him go. Let's get this cleaned up and take a look at what I caught him on. That's it right there. That nice big 3+ pound bass. Caught him on this little 7-inch worm. Texas rigged. The Texas rig is my favorite because this lake has a ton of this really thick grass. It's almost like bamboo. There's a ton of wood like this all over the bottom of this lake. It used to be a river and they put dams on the end and flooded it. So everywhere there used to be trees is now all underwater. There's a ton of just underwater stuff. And when you use a Texas rig, you can drag it over and through most of it. If I was using an open hook bait, like a crankbait right here, 2 casts, I would have lost it already. So that's why I use this here. And if you have a lot of weeds and wood and rocks where you fish, the Texas rig is going to work great for you too. Now that I've caught one on the ribbon tail worm, let's switch to a curl tail worm. This worm also has a curly tail, but it's not flat. It's just a round curl tail worm. We're also going to Texas rig this one. About a 1/4 inch. Slide it up. Line it up where it'll be nice and straight and push it through. Skin hook. We're ready to go with a different kind of worm, which is similar, on the same rig. Let's see if we can get another bass. Same kind of thing. I'm just dragging it, occasionally hopping it off the bottom, just like this. Reeling up the slack, waiting for that bite. That's all I was doing when I caught that big bass just now. A Texas rig is not slime proof. However, if you got this kind of weed in your lake, you're still gonna catch some of that. You're gonna catch that on any lure you're fishing with, so you're just gonna have to bear with it. If there's a little bit of that on your lure, the fish won't really care so much. But if you got a huge ball of it on there, a fish might think twice before it goes for it. Hopefully I can get another bass on the different style worm, rigged the same way. Just to kind of show you, it doesn't really matter. As long as you present it the correct way, in the correct spot, you can catch a bass on almost any kind of worm. Fish. There we go. Fish number 2. Nice little bass here. More like a 3/4 pounder, you know. It's not nearly as big as that first one was, but he did go for that Texas rig curltail worm, the round body style. Got him right out here. Good little fish. That's worm fish number 2. It's all about the rig and being in the right place at the right time. So far I used 1 silver and 1 red. Still caught 2 bass. Let's let this one go. All right, well, that fish managed to fling my worm off. Let's get another one. Yeah, this time we'll go with this finesse worm. So this worm does not have a curled tail. It's more like a stick, a skinny little stick worm. It does have a little bit of a tail here. It might give it a little bit of action. Gonna rig it the same exact way. Let's see if I can catch a bass on a 3rd worm. All different kinds, just to show you it's mostly in the rigging, right? You got to be able to present it to the fish without getting snagged every 5 seconds. Texas rig is a great way to do it. Fish. Feels like a good one. Nice strong fish here. Woo! Get out of there. It's got me in the weeds there. All right. Third bass of the day. Third Texas rig bass of the day. A little bigger than that last one. We're at about 1 pound here. Good looking fish. Went for that blue man's jelly worm on a Texas rig. That's 3 different kinds of worms, 3 totally different colors. That's not always what's important. You got to be able to get it to the fish. You got to get it to look correct, and you got to get them onto the bank. 3 different Texas rig worm fish, all in about 40 minutes. That's how you do it. I mean, the Texas rig is just awesome. It's a great way to get the worm to the fish without catching a bunch of other stuff. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I hope I got my point across. The rig is often more important than the worm. I was able to use 3 different kinds of worms, 3 totally different colors, and catch 3 bass, all within about 40 minutes. The Texas rig can get it done. Thanks for watching Realistic Fishing. Keep it realistic.